back to Happiness Habitat. I'm your host, Jacqlyn Burnett, with a very special guest today, Darienne Mobley, here joining with us, author, speaker, and leadership coach. Thank you so much for being on the show.
I am so excited to be here. I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you, and I feel like our messages are very aligned. So I look forward to this conversation.
There, we have Happiness Habitat, and then you have your book that just came out, Dare to Choose Happy. Let's just get into it. Tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
About 10 years ago, I'm 63 years old, so I've been around for a while. And about 10 years ago, I had success, right? What it looks like from the outside. I had a big job. I had a beautiful home. I had a great husband. And in the middle of the night, I would say, okay, God, is this it? Am I done? Is there anything else? And I felt guilty that I wasn't satisfied with what I had. And so I hired a coach because I came across one and she asked me some really hard questions that I didn't have the answers to. What was my vision for my life? What was important to me? I was just doing the list. Like, happy was a feeling that you might have on Hallmark moments like birthdays and Christmas Day and anniversaries or whatever. It wasn't something you went after and decided to be happy. It was just a feeling you got every now and then. And so I ended up moving to be by water, and I ended up changing what I do for a living. And I'm now a life and leadership coach. And I work with men and women, but primarily professional women who are smart and amazing. And they're just trying to figure out how to do life and leadership a little bit better. And what I found is that my own messiness that I thought I needed to keep hidden was really my gift. And that was to share vulnerably who I am and what I'm about. And I found that all of these women have this at the core. They have the same kind of, am I doing it okay? Am I letting anybody down? Am I good enough mother? Am I good enough at this? And so I found that there was such a common theme that I felt like sharing my journey and the journey of many of the women that I coach was important.
That's wonderful. That's beautiful. And I know prior to this in your earlier career, you were in tourism, you were in the travel business.
Travel business, and I was in the
how did you kind of migrate over from, as you mentioned, you had this shift, but what was that like moving over industries? Because that's a whole nother world.
It's a whole nother world. It's a whole nother world. At the point that I started questioning things, and I was actually the director of tourism for the state of Mississippi and worked for the governor, and then the state of Louisiana, which not many people have worked in two states like that. So it was a very, again, successful from the outside, right? But I don't know that it was really aligned with my gifts and talents. Like, it was kind of trudging through mud to get it all done every day. So anyway, I was a consultant at the point that I started questioning my life. And I was a tourism consultant, and I went back to school. I took some risk. I let some clients go. When you trust your intuition, sometimes we don't, because what it's saying is too scary. And that was, I needed to let go of one of my biggest clients because it wasn't really in alignment with my gifts, and it didn't give me room to grow. So there were really some big decisions to be made in there, but I did go back to school. I got certified in coaching.
Right.
And I really felt like when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, Jacqlyn, there's an ease. It doesn't have to be so hard.
Yeah. And you mentioned something too, how it was, fearful. And there's that common saying of fear is where there is unknown, but unknown
Right.
is where the most greatest gifts can be found.
Yeah.
And so just touching on fear, how did you embrace the fear? Because it is a scary thing. And out of all the people that I've connected with, it's not easy to just conquer fear. How would you advise into embracing it?
For me, I think I got to the point that staying where I was more painful than jumping up off the high dive.
Wow. That's
I was
strong.
ready to. So I have always been somewhat insecure and not taken a lot of risk. But the times that I have, which I call those living out loud moments, when I did things that were super scary and unknown, and I didn't know what was going to happen, are the things that changed the trajectory of my life. So
That's
it's
beautiful.
kind of facing the fear and saying to yourself, okay, what's the worst that can happen? I'm going to go ask this guy if I can be the head of tourism. What is the worst that could happen? He could say no. He could say, you're not qualified or we don't like you. Okay, can I accept that? That'd be hard, but if that's the worst that can happen, then I'm going to go ask.
That's
And I got
wonderful.
the job.
There we go. I love that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Now, transitioning then into your new role, you've been practicing for over 35 years. What has that been like, and how has your definition of happiness changed over time?
Completely.
Mm.
And I say that it's also a definition for yourself of what success is. There's a great book by David Brooks called The Second Mountain. And he talks about climbing the first mountain, which was success and recognition and achievement and money and all the stuff, right? All the stuff that you want other people to validate for you that you're successful. But he got to the top of that mountain and he didn't have any Saturday go to lunch friends. He wasn't connected in his community. He wasn't, so that's, to me, that's the shift that I made, is that I write in the book, I have been dancing as fast as I can for as long as I can remember for you to like me. I became whatever you needed me to be. And it was exhausting and it was never ending because somebody's not going to like me. Somebody's not going to get my stuff.
Yeah.
And getting comfortable with that has really been the lesson. So for me, success now is about commitment, community, peace, happiness. Contentment is this big word that I've sort of honed in on in the last couple of years, which is I'm okay today. It doesn't mean I don't want more. It doesn't mean I'm not that I'm complacent and I'm giving up. Goodness, I just wrote a book. But it means that today is okay. I am content
Beautiful.
today.
I love that. There's that whole, complacent versus content, and that's
Yeah,
so spot on. I love that. Well, let's talk about your book because I have so many questions, so many things I want to know. We're so similar in the fact that, dare to choose happy. Everyone has happiness within. That's kind of what I've learned from, even just the Amazon page itself. And I think that's so true. For me, I believe the same thing. You already have it within you, and it's about just building that to experience that beautiful happiness. Can you tell me about this book?
sure. I'd love to because I think it's really, I'm so proud of it and scared to death that people are going to read it because it is all me. It is making my mess my message. So there's a whole lot of my journey in there, which I put the messy parts too, not just the really pretty parts. Um, to me, happiness, the reason that the title is so important is we don't just be happy. We have to choose happy. We get up every day and say, okay, I really like it when my kitchen's clean. So I'm going to clean my kitchen. I like it when my house when I spend time with my daughter. I'm going to call her to, we decide. And it's through gratitude and it's through perspective. So I can choose to see a situation and see the bad parts. And I can take that same situation and choose to see it in a different way. So the book is divided into 4 pillars that I call the intentional action pillars. And that is your intuition, trust in your gut. It is always telling you your next right thing. We don't always listen. We ask all our friends what color we should paint our wall, and we knew all the time what color we liked best. Um, Clarity, which I think is really the big one, where we as women particularly don't ask ourselves what we want. We and maybe you are more evolved than me, and I hope so, because I think for women we tend to know what our husbands want and what our parents wanted for us and what our children need, and we don't sit down and say, what are my values, what are my gifts, how am I going to give back to this world? The third piece is priority, which is not getting the whole list done, but getting the real stuff done. So I want to help people with specific strategies on making your day be a little more peaceful and having some freedom. And the last piece is truth, which is none of us like to have difficult conversations, but that is what moves us to intimacy and connection, is when we can say the hard stuff and speak up for ourselves. So those are the four pillars. And I also included, which I think is unique, exercises in each pillar so that women can do their own work and say, okay, what's my vision? What do I want to take from this chapter?
So beautiful. You mentioned so many things there that I've been practicing for so long. I'm so grateful to be a student of actually my cousin, metaphorically, David Meltzer. And he's instilled all these practices, even I was working for him at the company. Truth vibrates the fastest, and fear is the beautiful thing because you get to embrace the new. And it's such a wonderful thing to actually open up to. You had a couple things that you were mentioning that I kind of want to touch on. And it's when you were talking about how, this people pleasing everyone else but yourself. I actually just read something very interesting in a psychology journal. And it talked about how when you grow up as a child and you are the mom or the dad is always telling you, if you do this, you'll get this. Or if you go give your grandpa a hug, then you'll have an extra cookie. And from a very young age, kids, myself even, getting just rooted with how can we aim to please?
Yeah.
So what are some tactics where people who have grown up in environments like this can actually unwind that?
The first piece to anything, and I think really the gift of coaching is to teach people awareness. Like there's a little thing that goes off that says, okay, I'm doing it. Is this how I want to show up? Is this something I really want to say yes to? I work with women and men that are on boards and committees and they're doing all this stuff. And if you ask them if they enjoy it, they say no, but I can't quit because, for whatever reason. And it's like, why do we keep doing things that aren't working for us? Why do we keep hitting our head against the wall because we believe that we're supposed to, or we should, or so the first piece is becoming aware and then questioning. Because I also believe we all have this voice that says we're not enough. Some of us don't pay attention to it, which is great. And some of us live our lives based on that inside truth, right? I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. And it keeps us from living our best life. And it keeps us saying yes when we want to say no. It just feeds into all of the doing things we don't want to do anymore, which is part of the truth pillar in my book of you got to start small and say no to something that has real no consequences. Like, I don't want Mexican this weekend. I really want Italian. It's just that speaking up a little bit, and then it's almost like a muscle we have, and then we can do it when it's bigger.
Now, what about for the moments, and I'm speaking selfishly here because I want to know, I personally, when I have thoughts, I actually observe myself from like third party, right? Corner of the room. But I'm human and I still have these moments of, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do X or have enough. Like I had that instance this morning and they're not often, but when I have them, yes, I can snap out. But how can you, if there is a tool, how can you snap out of that even quicker? Even if you're observing? Is there a tool?
I think one of the tools is like if I get asked to speak, even if I know my calendar is free, I will stop and say, let me call you right back. Because I want to give myself a pause to say, okay, is this group really a group that's aligned with me? Am I speaking the week before? Am I really going to be exhausted? Like, where am I? Because my inclination in the moment is to say, even if my friends invite me to lunch, but I don't really want to go, It's to say, yeah, I can do that. Yes, I can make that speech. Yes, I can. That is our go-to. So giving yourself some kind of pause helps to all of a sudden say, okay, body, is this aligned with who I want to be today?
Beautiful. I love that. I love that. I am implementing that now forever. That is wonderful.
Good.
That is
Good.
so good. I feel like are we on a coaching session right now?
I know. Yeah, kind of. No. I wonder with you, have you ever not trusted your intuition and regretted it, or trusted it and then knew it was the right thing?
Yes and no. I think I've had instances for both. I've had so many different life experiences, dynamic, I should say, or diverse at a young age in my short, 10-year career so far. And when I didn't listen to my intuition, it it slightly backfired. It slightly
Right.
backfired when I took a job that I knew I probably shouldn't have taken. The payroll was late and it wasn't good,
Yeah.
versus when you align to your truth, which is you spoke about, and that's in the fourth pillar in your book. That's really when the magic happens. And
Yeah.
I think that's so beautiful. I want to touch on too, because you're such an expert in this, just leadership coaching, which means, as you mentioned, you're talking to high level entrepreneurs, board members, CEOs, executives. So what are some of the typical things that these professionals are coming to you for? And what are some of the solutions that you offer? Because I imagine a lot of this audience that's going to be that's listening might be going through similar things.
Yeah. Almost everybody that comes to me has a unique story, right?
Mm.
A unique perspective on where they are in life. And but when it boils down to it, it's about, am I doing the right thing? Am I enough in all of the roles that I play? How do I find balance?
Mhm.
And I really say balance it's a myth. I think we need to blend our life.
Mm. Love
That
that.
there are days that our child is sick and home takes over, and there are days that you have 4 or 5 meetings in a row and work takes over.
Mm.
So it's just blending. And I think for most of the women, that particularly women that I work with, they will give others grace that they will not give themselves.
What do you mean by
Uh,
that?
Meaning that if an employee needs to take off, they say, of course, go take care of your child. Of course, you can go do whatever. But for them, they say, oh, I can't leave early. I'm the boss. That would set a bad example. I've got to be the one that, they don't give
I'm
themselves the same
on that boat.
grace. Yeah. But I think in leadership, whatever, I call it leading from the inside out, until you are personally clear. And that takes some deep digging that I work with
Mhm.
in coaching. Like, what are you good at? What are your gifts and talents? Let's stay in your lane. Let's find your rhythm. What are you good at? What do you want? Then you can get out of your head and be present and available to the people that you lead. And when you
Mm.
have the guts to be vulnerable and say, yeah, I always get nervous when I go into these board meetings. Your staff doesn't know that. They think they're the only ones that get nervous. When you allow them to see behind the veil, you let them in,
Mm. That's
and it
beautiful. And the
strengthens all your,
imperfection.
yeah, yeah. But we think we're supposed to stay buttoned up and confident and sure of ourselves and, put on the face. And yet the opposite is true.
Mm. So beautiful. I love this conversation so much. I'm
Thank you.
studying right now to be a holistic integrative health coach. And, similar to you, happiness is a part of that.
It is.
Happiness is so a part of that. And I love what you mentioned, which is, sometimes we don't have a balance, not balanced, it's blended, which is so cool to look at it like that. And
Yeah.
looking at a blended life, what is like, how can one person in that moment of, my kid's sick and I need to focus on the home more, now I need to focus on the work, how do you
Yeah.
maintain that level of happiness, that center?
I heard a psychologist say that we are guaranteed pain and suffering. And unfortunately, I believe that's true.
Hmm.
But what I would add is we are not guaranteed happiness. We can be happy or we can not be happy, but we have to choose it. And
Mm.
that means choosing you. So we have this in our head. Selfish is taking care of ourselves and not taking care of anybody else. Selfless is kind of like Mother Teresa, and God, I love her, but I don't know that I can do that. I think we need to be self-full,
Love that.
which is just taking care of ourselves. We can't give from an empty cup. And I
Right.
think for most of the women that I work with, they don't do anything to fill their cup
Mm.
because they're trying to make sure that everybody else's cup is full.
Mm.
There's a line that I use that we have been taught we eat last. And maybe this is a Southern thing, but we make sure everybody else is okay. We make sure there was enough for everybody, and then
Right.
we go get our stuff.
I think that's also a Michigander thing too, because
Probably.
I love hosting and I'm always making sure everyone else is eating. I'm cleaning, I'm doing everything else. I don't even eat usually,
I
or like a
know.
little bite.
Me
What's
too.
up with that? What's up with us
What's
women
up with that?
sometimes? Come
I know.
on.
Well, and I'm pretty evolved, or I think I am. And when my husband and I go to restaurants, I immediately look at the menu to see what he's going to like. And how
Same.
stupid is that? He is 70 something years old. The man can pick a menu.
Oh my gosh. We're
So
so
it's
similar.
so ridiculous.
Oh my God. It comes from a place of love, obviously.
Absolutely.
But
And it's
even in
not a
those,
bad thing
it's not
there's
a
this
bad thing.
pendulum. It's not
Right.
a bad thing to care for somebody, and it's not a
Right.
bad thing to be generous and want to do things for people, but we have to put ourselves on the list.
It
One of
almost, yeah, please go on.
the things I started with my clients is I asked them to make a happy list.
Aw.
What are those things that make you happy? And the interesting thing about it has been none of them have, when I was in Italy, I was happy. It's like a hot bath, a candle on my counter, lunch with my girlfriends, a date
Hmm.
night with like it's not big stuff. And
Hmm.
yet we don't do it.
Yeah.
So all of my clients now are checking their happy list to say, what am I doing this week? Where am I finding my happiness this week?
That's so beautiful. I
And
love
that's a
it.
shift. That's a shift, right?
It takes practice too. It takes a lot of self-love, a lot of practice. Even if you are looking at the menu, picking out the item for your husband first, make sure you give
That
your
you
other,
got yours.
you have
Yeah.
yours. Oh, that's so beautiful. I want to keep diving in too because this leadership realm and their coaching, obviously it aligns with your book as well. What are some of the other key things that you're noticing within these clients that you're like, aha, I think that this is something that is more generalized.
I think what has been the most interesting thing to me is that I was lonely.
Hmm.
I had a few really close friends and I cherished them, but I really craved community and a sense of realness and authenticity. And I hate cocktail chit chat. Like I wanted to have real conversations. And so I started women's group coaching, which is really powerful. I do a mastermind 2 times a year with about 6 professional women from all over the country, and they just get real really fast. And what I have discovered is they were as lonely as I was.
Mm.
And they needed a safe place to say, yeah, I'm really worried about my mother, or I'm not okay, and my weight's gone up, and I'm not taking care of me. And most of the time, when you look back at the course of like a client works for me for a year, they took baby steps. Like maybe they were going to have a difficult conversation with somebody, or maybe they had to fire somebody, or maybe they spent some time journaling or whatever. They get to the end of the year and you realize that all those little baby steps have created and allowed you to be in a more full place to show up for yourself in a different way.
That's beautiful. What do you think the first place someone can start is to be on that
What
journey?
it's like, well, and it's in the book, I talk about the clarity piece.
Hmm.
It's quiet time, starting your day. I don't care if it's 10 minutes, that all the dinging is over, all the TVs are off, all the children are at school or whatever it is, finding your time and just breathing and asking yourself, I say 3 questions. What is my focus today? What do I need today? And what am I grateful for? And whatever comes up, you honor that.
Mm.
And what you need today may be go get the damn milk that we're out of, like whatever it is, do that. Um, because then you are centered and you are ready to face your world or whatever comes up in your day. You're not just all over the place, right? You have your agenda. We have to start with our list first.
Mhm.
What do I need to accomplish today? What do I need to get off my plate? And then the second piece is clarity. And it really is spending a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday or whatever you can carve out, doing a vision board, which I do every year, or a vision statement, or putting pictures in a Pinterest board of what do I want in my life. And it can be diamond earrings or it can be peace and fulfillment. Like there's no good or bad. It's what is it that I want this year? What do I want to attract? Because I believe that God and the universe bring us what we need when we are able to clearly say what that is.
Absolutely. Law of
Opportunity will just
manifestation.
come to us.
That's right. And you mentioned too prior, it's, when you have that list and you conquer that list. Now, what about when you go throughout that day and you're conquering the list, but something happens, like a car stopped too fast and it kind of got you a little unsettled? What's a tool people can use to get back on center?
Um, Two things I want to say. First is I am not Pollyanna. Bad things happen. Bad days happen. Horrible things happen in our lives that I don't want you not to feel and not to grieve and just happy your way through everything. But on a day where there's traffic or you miss a meeting or you're late or whatever, it is how can I see this situation differently? I can let this define my day or I can take it as a blip. How do I
Perception.
want to take this in? How do I want to perceive this?
I like to
My
call it
mother,
that gratitude lens.
yeah, my mother passed away when I was 22,
Wow.
and I can say that in, oh my God, I lost my mother, my life changed dramatically. I'm, all of the bad parts of that, or I can choose to say I had my mother for 22 whole years. It's just perspective.
It is,
And
yeah.
I can go back and forth. And that one may be true one day, but on the other days, I'm able to say, yeah, and I'm who I am because I went through that, whatever good and bad. So perspective is a huge shift. And we are in charge of how we perceive things. Like I don't control what happens to me, I control how I show up and respond.
Yep. And creating that perception too, because I think that's the foundation. Perception is literally comes from our subconscious, things that we experience throughout the day, which then it leads to our conscious, which is things that we can observe, which then leads to our perception.
Right.
How can one create a solid perception of gratitude?
I think part of it too is there's a story we tell ourselves. And so when I'm working with a client and that person is telling me, he said this, and then this happened, and then that happened, and I think he meant that or whatever, I go, what of that is fact? And what of that is the story you have made up? And when you get to the facts, the rest of it is just the story we have told ourselves about that event. And that event may be the traffic or the meeting or the whatever. It's separating ourselves from the story and saying, like, I had a business partner for years and we met every morning and sort of divided up our duties. Well, if she went by my office and didn't speak, I thought she was mad at me. And then I would start, what did I do? Or whatever.
Thinking in
When
your
I
head.
learned to get, when I learned to get curious And that was to walk in her office and say, "Are you okay? Is there anything going on?" It was never about me. It was, "Oh, I have a meeting in a few minutes and I'm not ready for it," or "I had a fight with my husband," or "I had a flat tire." I mean, it was never about me. But if you could replace judgment with curiosity, I wonder why they did that. I wonder why that guy stopped so quickly and I almost hit him
Hmm.
instead of "what an idiot." Maybe he's on the way to the hospital, but we don't know. It's all the, like I say, it's the
Right.
story we make up.
Right. So beautiful. I love that. And I look at that too as just, the gratitude lens, which I
Right.
love the metaphor of that. If you can just pay your gratitude lens and
Yeah.
look at it as glass half full instead of glass half empty,
Right.
or realize that you are in control of what you get to experience and do and things that do happen, and it's okay. You'll go through life so much more at peace.
Yeah. And it's, what we focus on expands.
Right.
So when we're focused on all the bad stuff, we're going to see more bad stuff.
Right.
It's just that easy.
So with that, I love the quote, what you resist persists.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
true. I don't want to get the red light. I don't want to get the red light. And then you get the red
And then
light.
you get the red light.
One of the classics. Oh, it's so beautiful. This is so wonderful. I want to talk about too, just, we talked about some of the foundations and some of the things that we saw in your clientele with leadership and some of the overarching things. In your book, we're talking that you have the 4 different pillars, the truth. What about in your book too, like how the exercises that people can go through? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I love that idea of just being able to read something and then to actually apply what you learn. I think
Yeah.
that's so valuable. What are some of the things that readers can actually take away and apply and take action?
Um, there are a lot of exercises in the book, and one of the things I say in the beginning is do what feels right for you. This, you're not going to win an award if you do every exercise and read the whole thing, and just go to the section that speaks to you and start there. So it's everything as simple as setting a word of the year. Like, what is
Ooh,
my intention for this year? And I have a little bracelet made every year with my word.
no
And
way.
yeah, and all my clients pick their word of the year. And it's like, it's not 27 goals, and it's not I should be better at this and do this and lose 20 pounds. It's I want to be brave. I
That's
want
so
to say
cool.
yes. I want to be grateful. Like
You wearing
whatever
your
that
bracelet?
is. Yeah.
You're wearing your bracelet right
No, I
now.
don't have it on. I
Oh,
don't have it on.
like that's
There's
so
a
cool.
and I don't make anything from it, but there's a myintent.com that makes up the intention bracelets. So I
Yes.
ask people to find their word of the year, and I ask them to set an intention for how they want to show up. So
Mm.
I want to show up with generosity. I want to show up with curiosity. I want to show up and be present. The greatest gift we give anybody is when we are present when they're talking to us. And it is so easy to say, "Oh, yeah, I'm listening to you." And we're emailing or we're reading something or we're not.
You
We're
can
not.
always tell. You always
And
know.
you can always tell. You can always
Oh,
tell.
I can tell when my cousin and I'm on the phone with him and he called me and there's a long pause in between an answer and
Yeah,
I'm like, hello.
dude. Yeah, talk to me.
Hey.
So we control how we show up. So I had a client a couple of years ago, and she had small children, she had a big job, and there was no space in her life to even breathe. And so her
Wow.
word of the year was peace. And she put a little sticky note on her dashboard in her car, and she said she started closing her door and having lunch for 20 minutes with no distractions. And that was all she could carve out at first. But it
That's
was her
awesome.
little piece of finding some quiet. And she said, then I started doing it at home. And then I started adding in, so like I say, it's all baby steps.
Well,
But
baby
that
steps.
was her piece of peace, how to find peace in my life.
I love that because words manifest.
They do.
Words carry energy. Everything that you say holds a vibration. Light has vibration, sound has vibration, thoughts have vibration. So it's so important to make sure you're putting out the right vibrations, because life's like a boomerang. It's going to come right back at you.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely. It's like saying I should go to yoga. What I say is I get to go to yoga. It has a
same. Yeah.
completely different energy. It lands differently in my body. It's not an obligation, it's a gift.
Mhm. That's so
Should is
beautiful.
the one word that I think we should all take out of our vocabulary. It's kind
Woulda,
of
coulda,
a,
shoulda. Take it out.
yeah, woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Take it out. We don't need that. That's so fun. I feel like I'm talking to my future self right now. This is just so cool. This is just so cool.
This is great. This is
You know, I'm gonna
great.
cut my hair soon. Just get it nice.
Well, yeah, we'll stay in touch. We'll be buds.
Perfect. Oh, that's so beautiful. I wanna, as we wrap up, I wanna end just, what is your biggest piece of advice for someone beginning on their journey of happiness?
We and I see this like in my daughter and her friends and young women that I coach too, but every decision feels like this big life decision. Like, what if I take that job and this is not my career decision, and what all this stuff that we do to ourselves, and it's just the next right thing. Just do the next right thing. Just take the next job. Don't make it into these, we're all going to get, I believe, where we're supposed to be, and we can make it easier for ourselves or we can make it harder. And easier is trusting your gut and getting quiet and saying, is this right for me? Is this right for me? And it's also to give ourselves some grace. Um, that for not so much forgiveness, but a sense of, if this isn't right, okay, then I'll switch. Like, it's not life or death.
Right.
I think for in many cases, and we should give ourselves some space.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
I have a last question for you. Well, almost
Okay.
last question. How do you define happiness?
Contentment and satisfaction and gratefulness.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being on Happiness Habitat. Where can everyone find you and
Well,
read your beautiful book?
I would love for people to get my book. It's on Amazon.com in Kindle and paperback. It is on Barnes and Noble. You can go to my website at DarienneInc.com and read more about my services and the work that I do with women. And it's just my little bitty piece of making somebody's world better, I hope.
Beautiful. Thank you for making my world better through this conversation. For everyone listening, please make sure you listen and share this show, and be sure to check out the book. I'll put the link in the description. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been great.